I thought I was paying for professional help. Turns out, I was funding my own humiliation. When you're desperate enough to trust a stranger with your career secrets, you learn real quick that desperation has a price tag, and it's always higher than what's written on the invoice. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was shared with us by one of our longtime viewers, and he wanted his experience heard. I was sitting in my Seattle apartment at 3 in the morning, scrolling through Upwork like a man possessed. 6 months. That's how long I'd been unemployed after my marketing director position got eliminated in another corporate restructuring. My savings account was bleeding out faster than my pride, and both were running dangerously low. The rejection emails had stopped coming because I'd stopped getting interviews. My resume looked like it was written in 2010 because, honestly, most of it was. I needed help, and I needed it desperately. That's when I found Pani's profile. 5-star rating across 47 reviews. Her portfolio showcased sleek resumes and LinkedIn profiles that looked like they belonged to Fortune 500 executives. Her rates were reasonable, $50 per hour for consultation, package deals starting at $500. But what caught my attention was her bio. I understand the struggle of career transitions and believe everyone deserves a second chance at professional success. I should have known that anyone who understood my desperation that well had probably caused it for others. I sent her a message at 3:17 a.m., trying to sound professional while fighting the urge to pour my heart out to a stranger. Hi Pani, I'm a marketing professional seeking help with resume modernization and career strategy. Would love to discuss your services. Her response came within 2 hours, which surprised me given the time difference. Hi Martin, thank you for reaching out. I can absolutely help you transform your career prospects. I specialize in helping experienced professionals like yourself navigate today's competitive job market. When would be a good time for a brief consultation call? I believe in building personal connections with my clients because your success is my success. That line hit me harder than it should have. Someone believed in my success. I hadn't heard that in months. Our first video call felt like therapy I couldn't afford. Pani appeared on screen in what looked like a modern Bangkok office, her English crisp and accent slight. She had this way of listening that made me feel like every word mattered. I found myself telling her things I hadn't admitted to anyone, how the layoff had crushed my confidence, how I was 52 and felt obsolete in a market that seemed designed for 20-somethings, how my wife's subtle disappointment was harder to bear than my own. Martin, I hear the frustration in your voice, and I want you to know that what you're experiencing is completely normal, she said, taking notes on a tablet while maintaining eye contact. The job market has changed dramatically, but your experience is valuable. We just need to package it correctly for today's hiring managers. She asked detailed questions about my previous roles, my industry contacts, my salary expectations. She wanted to know about specific achievements, company cultures, even office politics from my last job. Understanding your complete professional history helps me craft a narrative that showcases your unique value proposition, she explained. After 90 minutes, she presented her recommendation, a complete career transformation package for $800. New resume, LinkedIn optimization, cover letter templates, and industry positioning strategy. Most of my clients see interview requests within 2 weeks of implementing their new materials, she assured me. I agreed immediately. For the first time in months, someone believed I was worth investing in. I sent the payment before the call ended, desperate to maintain the momentum of hope she'd created. I'm so excited to work with you, Martin. This is going to be the beginning of something wonderful for your career, she said as we ended the call. I believed her completely. 3 days later, Pani sent me draft materials that looked incredible. My resume transformed from a bland chronological list into a dynamic showcase of achievements and impact metrics. She'd repositioned my experience using modern terminology and strategic keywords. But then she called with additional recommendations. Martin, after reviewing current market trends for someone with your background, I think we should add industry research to ensure we're targeting the right opportunities, she said during our follow-up call. It's an additional 200, but it's crucial for positioning you competitively. That sounded logical. While she was at it, she suggested salary negotiation coaching for another 300. Most professionals leave money on the table because they don't understand their market value. This coaching will pay for itself with your first offer. Then, interview preparation for 400. Your technical skills are excellent, but interview styles have evolved significantly. Modern hiring managers expect specific communication approaches. Each edition felt necessary, logical, almost urgent. My credit card took hit after hit, but Pani's enthusiasm was infectious. She sent progress updates with encouraging messages. Working on your LinkedIn strategy today. You have such impressive experience. Found 3 target companies that would be perfect for your background. Your interview prep materials are coming together beautifully. The communication felt personal, almost intimate. She shared details about her own career struggles, how she'd built her consulting business from nothing after being overlooked for promotions in traditional corporate roles. I understand what it's like to feel undervalued, Martin. That's why I'm so passionate about helping people like us find the recognition we deserve. I began to see her as more than a contractor. She was my career savior, the person who finally understood my worth when everyone else had written me off. When she suggested executive coaching sessions at 150 per hour, I didn't hesitate. This is the final piece, Martin. Everything else was preparation. These sessions will give you the confidence and presence to command the room during interviews. The coaching sessions revealed Pani's true skill, though I didn't recognize it at the time. She had this way of building me up and tearing me down in the same conversation, creating a cycle of hope and dependency that kept me coming back for more. Martin, your experience is impressive, but your delivery lacks executive presence, she said during our 3rd session. You're apologizing for your value instead of owning it. That's why you're not getting the responses you want. She was right, of course. I did feel apologetic about everything: my age, my unemployment gap, my desperation. But then she'd offer a solution. I have a specialized module for executive presence that I usually reserve for C-suite clients. It's 250, but I think you're ready for that level of coaching. I paid for it. During another session, she criticized my interview responses. You're giving textbook answers, Martin. Hiring managers can smell rehearsed responses from a mile away. You need to develop authentic storytelling techniques. Another 200 for storytelling coaching. Each session left me feeling simultaneously hopeful and inadequate, like I was making progress but always falling short of some undefined standard. She recorded all our sessions. For my reference, she explained. Sometimes clients don't remember the valuable insights we uncover. These recordings help you review and internalize the coaching. I thought it was thoughtful. I was sharing my most vulnerable admissions about career failures, financial stress, and personal insecurities with someone who was supposedly helping me overcome them. The recordings captured everything: my fears about being too old for modern workplaces, my anxiety about salary negotiations, my admission that my marriage was straining under financial pressure. It's completely normal to feel this way, Martin. She'd reassure me after each vulnerable confession. That's what makes you human and relatable. We just need to channel these emotions productively. I trusted her with my deepest professional and personal fears, not knowing she was cataloging them for purposes I couldn't imagine. By week 6, Pani had expanded my support network significantly. She introduced me to her business partners, who could accelerate my job search in specialized areas. First came Jennifer, a LinkedIn optimization specialist who could increase my profile visibility for 250. Pani shared your background with me, and I think you're perfect for my premium networking service, Jennifer said during our introductory call. How did she know so much about my background already? Then Marcus, an industry insider who promised to connect me with decision-makers for a 400. Based on what Pani told me about your experience and goals, I have 3 contacts who would be very interested in speaking with you, he said. Again, he seemed to know intimate details about my employment history and salary expectations before we discussed them. Finally, Sarah, a career mentor who specialized in executives in transition, for 600. Pani briefed me on your situation, and I think my network could be transformative for someone with your profile. She explained. Each conversation felt scripted, rehearsed, like they were reading from the same playbook. They all knew specific details about my previous companies, my reasons for leaving, my financial pressures. Doubt crept in, but Pani's reassurances kept me trapped in the cycle. This is how professional networking works at the executive level, Martin. People talk, they share opportunities, they vouch for quality candidates. You're not paying for introductions, you're paying for endorsements from respected industry professionals. The sunk cost of my investment made questioning the process feel like admitting failure. I'd already spent over 40. Backing out now would mean losing everything I'd invested in my career recovery. So I kept paying, kept trusting, kept hoping that the next service would be the one that finally opened the doors I needed. I didn't realize I was paying for introductions to people who already knew everything about me because someone had sold them my information before our conversations ever began. Then my nightmare began with a phone call I'll never forget. Martin? This is Rebecca from TechFlow Recruiting. I have a marketing manager position that might interest you. Based on your current financial situation and unemployment duration, this seems like a realistic starting point. My blood went cold. I hadn't told any recruiter about my financial situation. The position was 40% below my previous salary, in a company I'd never heard of, for responsibilities I'd outgrown 5 years ago. How did you know about my financial situation? I asked. Rebecca paused. I'm sorry. I thought you were looking for immediate placement given your circumstances. Wasn't that in your profile notes? Profile notes? What profile notes? I ended the call and immediately contacted Pani. Pani, I just got a call from a recruiter who somehow knew about my financial situation and unemployment timeline. Did you share my information with recruiting agencies? Her response was immediate, but evasive. Martin, that's concerning. Your information should be confidential. Sometimes these things leak through LinkedIn or other platforms. You know how these recruiters are, they make assumptions based on profile activity. She paused, then smoothly transitioned. Actually, this highlights why we need to schedule an emergency strategy session. We need to control your narrative before misconceptions spread further. I can fit you in for a crisis management consultation at 300. Even in my confusion, I noticed how quickly she turned my crisis into another revenue opportunity. But I was still thinking like her client, not her victim. I scheduled the session, desperate to stop whatever leak was damaging my professional reputation. During the call, she convinced me that aggressive networking was the solution. We need to flood the market with your correct information to counteract whatever false narrative is circulating, she explained. Another 500 for an accelerated outreach campaign. I paid it, not realizing I was funding the very system that was destroying my chances. The recruiter calls kept coming, each one more insulting than the last. Entry-level positions, temporary assignments, part-time consulting roles that paid less than unemployment benefits. Every caller seemed to have the same information about my desperate circumstances and willingness to accept reduced compensation. I was being positioned in the market as damaged goods, a distressed asset available at discount rates. The truth came from an unexpected source. David Chen, a LinkedIn connection from my previous company, sent me a private message that changed everything. Hey Martin, weird question, but did you sign up for some kind of resume farming service? A recruiter just reached out about you with very specific details about your employment gap and financial pressures. Seemed like more than they should know. Resume farming. I'd never heard the term. But David explained it in a follow-up call. There are freelancers who collect detailed client information and sell it to recruiting agencies as leads. They position job seekers as desperate candidates who'll accept lowball offers. It's a secondary business model for some of these career service providers. My stomach dropped. I spent the next 3 hours researching everything I could find about Pani and her business practices. What I discovered made me physically sick. She maintained a secondary business called Talent Pipeline Solutions that licensed job seeker databases to recruitment agencies. Her website promised pre-qualified candidates with detailed psychological profiles and salary flexibility indicators. The testimonials were from recruiters praising the quality of leads and the depth of candidate information provided. My information was there, packaged and commoditized. My resume, salary history, personal struggles, and every vulnerable admission from our coaching sessions had been compiled into a marketing profile positioning me as a distressed asset available at below-market rates. The recorded sessions weren't for my benefit, they were market research for her secondary business. She'd been collecting compromising material on all her clients, building a database of vulnerable professionals she could sell to agencies looking for desperate candidates. I wasn't her client. I was her product. I demanded an immediate video call with Pani. When she appeared on screen, her demeanor was different, cooler, more businesslike. "Martin, I understand you have some concerns. Let's discuss this professionally. Did you sell my information to recruiting agencies?" I asked directly. She didn't even pretend to be surprised by the question. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about our business relationship and the services provided. That's not an answer. All of my clients benefit from increased market visibility through my professional networks. That's part of the value proposition I provide. You sold my personal information to recruiters without my consent." Her tone shifted, becoming defensive. "Everything I've done has been to help your career prospects. The recruitment partnerships help my clients get more exposure to opportunities. Isn't that what you wanted?" When I pressed harder, she became aggressive. "Martin, you signed agreements for all services provided. If you're unhappy with the results, perhaps the issue isn't with my methods, but with your unrealistic expectations given your employment situation." The mask had completely slipped. This wasn't the supportive career counselor who'd listened to my struggles with empathy. This was a cold businesswoman protecting her revenue stream. "I want my information removed from whatever databases you've created." She laughed. Actually laughed. "That's not how this works, Martin. You can't unsend information that's already been processed through professional networks." Then came the threat that made everything clear. I should also mention that our coaching sessions were recorded for quality assurance purposes. "If you decide to pursue legal action or damage my business reputation, those recordings might become relevant to demonstrate the realistic assessment of your career prospects we discussed." She was threatening to release my most vulnerable confessions publicly if I fought back. Every desperate admission, every financial pressure, every personal failure I'd shared in confidence was now blackmail material. The call ended with her blocking me across all platforms. I sat in my apartment, staring at the screen, realizing I'd paid someone $12,000 to systematically destroy my career prospects while collecting evidence to ensure I couldn't fight back. The aftermath was brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. The financial loss was obvious. $12,000 that I couldn't afford to lose, charged across 3 credit cards that were now maxed out. But the psychological damage ran deeper. I contacted my credit card companies, filed disputes, reached out to lawyers, and reported the situation to Upwork. Everyone expressed sympathy, but offered little recourse. Technically, Pani had delivered services, resume writing, coaching sessions, networking introductions. The fact that she'd monetized my information through secondary channels wasn't explicitly addressed in the contracts I'd signed in my desperation. The lawyers I consulted explained that proving damages would be difficult, since I couldn't demonstrate that her actions directly caused specific job rejections. "Did you read the terms of service you agreed to?" one lawyer asked. Of course I hadn't. I was desperate. And desperate people don't read the fine print on their salvation. Upwork's response was particularly frustrating. They investigated, and found that Pani had technically completed all contracted work. The secondary business wasn't conducted through their platform, so it fell outside their dispute resolution process. We understand your concerns, but our role is limited to the specific services contracted through our platform, their support representative explained. My account of events was noted, but Pani's profile remained active with her 5-star rating intact. I was trapped in a system that protected the provider over the victim, where technical compliance mattered more than ethical behavior. The most devastating realization was that my trust in professional relationships was completely shattered. Every future interaction with recruiters, career counselors, or networking contacts would be filtered through the lens of Pani's betrayal. How do you rebuild professional credibility when you can't trust the very people who are supposed to help you build it? For months afterward, the consequences of Pani's actions haunted every aspect of my job search. Recruiters continued calling with increasingly insulting positions, each one referencing information that could only have come from my compromised profile. I have a data entry position that might work for someone in your situation, one recruiter offered. Data entry. I had 25 years of marketing leadership experience, and someone was offering me data entry work because my profile indicated I was desperate enough to accept anything. Some recruiters were more direct about their sources. My database indicates you're flexible on compensation due to extended unemployment, another explained. This temporary assignment might be perfect for rebuilding your confidence. My recorded vulnerabilities were being used against me in every salary negotiation. Statements I'd made during coaching about my financial pressures were now positioned as evidence that I'd accept below-market offers. The violation felt fresh with every call. Other recruiters mentioned details that could only have come from our private sessions. One referenced my marriage stress, suggesting that a stable position would be good for my family situation. Another mentioned my age concerns, offering a role in a mature, friendly workplace. My most private fears and insecurities had been weaponized against me in the job market. I realized that Pani's violation would haunt my career prospects for years. Every database that contained my information would continue circulating it, each transfer making me appear more desperate and reducing my perceived market value. I was caught in a feedback loop, where my desperation had been monetized and multiplied, creating artificial evidence of unemployability that would follow me through every future job search. The only escape was to essentially start over with new professional accounts and a completely rebuilt network, abandoning years of career history because it had been contaminated by someone I'd trusted to help me. Rebuilding required patience I barely possessed and trust I thought I'd lost forever. I created new professional profiles, carefully crafted to exclude any information that Pani could have corrupted. I reached out to old colleagues directly, bypassing recruiting channels where my compromised data might surface. I developed new networking relationships through industry events and professional associations, slowly building credibility through face-to-face interactions rather than digital platforms. The process took nearly 2 years, but gradually I began receiving legitimate opportunities through clean channels. My eventual job came through a former colleague who recommended me directly to his new company's CEO. No recruiters, no databases, no digital footprints that could be traced back to Pani's manipulation, just personal vouching from someone who knew my work quality firsthand. The position paid fairly, respected my experience, and treated me like a professional rather than a charity case. But even in success, I remained hyper-vigilant about information security and professional relationships. The experience had taught me that desperation makes you prey in ways you can't anticipate. Professional predators like Pani specifically target vulnerable people because our circumstances make us easy to exploit and unlikely to fight back effectively. We're so grateful for any help that we don't question the helper's motivations until it's too late. I learned to recognize the warning signs I'd missed: too much early empathy, requests for detailed personal information, expanding service offerings that create dependency, and secondary revenue streams that aren't transparent. Most importantly, I learned that when someone promises to solve your problems too easily, they're probably creating new ones for profit. The digital age has created new vulnerabilities in professional relationships that we're not equipped to recognize or defend against. I share this story not for revenge. punny is probably still out there collecting vulnerable people's information and calling it career services. I share it as a warning. When you're desperate, every offer of help looks like salvation, but some helpers are just predators with better marketing. The $12,000 I lost was expensive tuition for lessons I should have learned for free. Trust is a luxury the desperate can't afford, but skepticism is a necessity we can't afford to ignore. Your desperation is visible to people who know how to profit from it, and the internet has made finding desperate people easier than ever. Professional predators aren't necessarily foreign scammers or obvious criminals. They're often well-educated service providers who've discovered that vulnerable people pay more and complain less. They position exploitation as empowerment and call emotional manipulation coaching. If someone promises to transform your career prospects quickly, ask yourself why they're so confident about solving problems that you haven't been able to solve yourself. If they request detailed personal information beyond what's necessary for the stated service, question their motives. If they introduce additional services that create dependency rather than independence, recognize the pattern. And if they make you feel like they're the only person who truly understands your situation, remember that understanding and exploitation often look identical from the inside. The hardest lesson was learning that my desperation had been both the cause of my victimization and the tool used against me. Painey didn't create my unemployment or financial pressure, but she weaponized it. She turned my legitimate need for career help into a revenue opportunity that prioritized her profit over my success. The tragedy isn't just the money lost or the career damage sustained, it's the realization that people will systematically exploit your lowest moments for financial gain and call it professional services. In the end, I paid $12,000 to learn that trust is a luxury the desperate can't afford, but it's a lesson that potentially saved me from much larger losses in the future. Sometimes the most expensive education provides the most valuable knowledge, even when you never wanted to enroll in the class.